Welcome aboard.
Please welcome to the stage Axios Future of Defense reporter, Colin Demarest.
Hey everyone, I'm Colin Demarest, the defense reporter here at Axios. I write the weekly Future of Defense newsletter. It drops every Wednesday. You'll get those scoops straight to your inbox if you do sign up. Yesterday I covered 3D printed drones and AI-fueled resupply. If you haven't already subscribed, why? You should do it right now. You can go to axios.com/newsletters to do so. And if you're following along on social media today, please use the hashtag #AxiosEvents. Today we're going to be diving into the future of defense with new leadership in Washington and explore innovations around aviation and manufacturing. But first, before we get into it, we're going to do something a little fancy for our in-room audience. We want your feedback. So we have a question that'll pop up here on the screen with a QR code. Give that a scan. I'll give you guys a minute. Take out your phones. I'll hold you to it. The question we were asking today is, will the Air Force's F-47 and Navy's F/A-XX, to be determined, be the last manned fighters America makes? We'd love to hear your thoughts, and we'll share the results later in the program. The choices are yes, no, and too soon to say. With that, let's get started. Our first guest is joining us from Capitol Hill and is a leader in defense policy. Please welcome Congresswoman Jen Kiggans of Virginia. So busy times.
Yes,
busy times on the Hill and the Pentagon. We also just got out of Sierra Space.
Yeah.
Yesterday, you were there talking on the congressional panel, and the day prior, on Tuesday, you published an op-ed arguing for East Coast basings for F-35s, specifically in the Virginia Beach area.
That's right.
You made the same argument at Sierra Space. Why is that move necessary, and what sort of infrastructure upgrades would be required at that air station if that did happen?
Yeah, well, good morning, and thank you very much for having me. And just great to be with you all, and what a great event it was yesterday at Sierra in Space. And thank you for just kicking this off with my passion project since I've been in Congress. This is my second term. I represent Hampton Roads area, so Virginia Beach, and we have the Atlantic Fleet there. Norfolk is just outside my district. I have Naval Air Station Oceana, which is the East Coast Master Jet Base. I also have Little Creek, which is home to a lot of our Navy SEALs. And then we have Dam Neck, a lot of intelligence community there. So for me, and as my background, just as a 10-year Navy veteran, I flew H-46s and H-3s, so I was helicopters, but married to an F-18 pilot who served for 20 years. And we have our son, who's a Naval Academy graduate, who just selected jets out of flight school. So it's kind of a family tradition for us. In addition to the people that I represent there in Hampton Roads, a large Navy family there, our friends, a lot of their children are now entering the service. So that district really cares about the Navy and especially naval aviation. And so for me, I've grown up at that base. That was my last duty station, was there. I flew H-3s in a search and rescue capacity. So I've kind of watched the transition of that base. And that base had been on the BRAC list and then was taken off. We actually moved the F-18s up to Oceana, to Virginia Beach from Cecil Field, which was in Jacksonville. That was back in the 90s. So it's been a long time, but we have to continue to progress. What is next? What is next on the plate for naval aviation? And the F-18s that are there right now are doing a great job. We've got some legacy Hornets, we've got Super Hornets, but we just have F-18s there. So what does it look like next step? And there's a lot of talk about, even I appreciate your question that you just asked about unmanned aircraft, and I would say too soon to tell if you want my answer. Okay. But of course, I'm a pilot advocate, so I don't want to put my whole profession out of business. But we do need to think about what's next, and what is next and what is here right now is the F-35. And so we see the Navy integrating F-35s on the West Coast, and there's a lot of focus on the West Coast right now, appropriately, because we know that the next fight is more than likely would be in that region with China. And so preparing for that, we have put, the Navy has planned for Squadrons 1 through 8 of F-35s at Naval Air Station Lemoore, which is the West Coast Master Jet Base. There's just two. There's an East Coast and a West Coast Master Jet Base, mine in Virginia Beach and the one in Lemoore. And we visited Lemoore last year just to see what that looked like. And the base looks awesome out there. They're doing a great job. They have beautiful new hangar spaces. They have a surplus of housing. Their community, just facilities and whatnot, even their barracks are they look great. So we know that money follows the new toys, right? And so I'm seeing that happening on the West Coast, and the Navy does not have plans on the East Coast at my East Coast Master Jet Base for F-35s right now. So since I've been in Congress and just really understanding what that would look like to my base, which I see struggling, I see our base, our housing is inadequate. I have less than 50% that's actually livable on the unaccompanied side. My CDC Child Development Center has over 1,000 kids on the waiting list. I have 6 hangar doors that don't close. I have roofs that need repair, that leak, the mold issues that I continue to hear about when squadrons return from deployment. It's not acceptable. So I too want to be a part of this discussion as a person who represents that base. There's no better way to get that funding to come to our district, to come to that base, than to have plans for the F-35.
So whose ear or ears are you bending for this issue, both the F-35 and
everyone
maybe...
I can get a hold of. So all of you, and I want you to tell your friends, and everybody that's got a star on their shoulder, I try to get in front of. We have the privilege of having a lot of meetings with military leadership just in this congressional capacity. We went to Tailhook last year, so if some of you have heard, Tailhook is like the Naval Aviation Convention for jet squadrons. We have National Helicopter Association for the helo guys, but actually there was some helo presence at Tailhook, but we went last year, and I went for the sole purpose of just getting in front of everybody that again had extra stars or stripes on their uniform. It's a top-down decision, right? And right now there's a strategic laydown plan that will be hashed out this year from the Navy, and the Navy everybody's in a kind of a time of transition right now with different administration, and the Navy is not immune to that. We have a new Secretary of the Navy. Right now we're awaiting a new CNO. So there's some time of transition right now, and I need the leadership that we've had in place, but then also the new leadership to just understand what this looks like. Because think about it too in the sense of current events and what happened on Israel on October 7th. We sent 2 aircraft carriers over to the Red Sea right after that event. We sent the Ford and the Eisenhower, both from Hampton Roads, with people that live in my district, the sailors, men and women. And they kept the peace there, right? We turn on the news and we watch what's happening, and we watch even when the Houthis were taking off and dropping bombs in Yemen. I mean, they show the aircraft carriers. They show aircraft carriers from my district. They show F-18s taking off of these aircraft carriers. So there should be no question about the strategic importance of this mobile air dominance that we can send on tons of steel. We can send air power to any part of the world quickly. So it's so important that we protect that asset. But, we had Indo-PACOM yesterday for a hearing on Armed Services Committee.
And you just met with Admiral Paparo, too, correct?
That's Admiral Paparo. And so talking to him just about the importance of the East Coast, because, again, I understand the focus on the West and the China fight, and that's what he's prepared for every day, to fight tonight, right? That's his job. That's what we pay him to do, he says. But he's going to need other assets. He's going to need the Atlantic Fleet as well. And I need the most prepared carrier air wings that I can get.
To your point about the new administration in this moment of transition, President Trump and Secretary Hegseth this week teased a $1 trillion defense budget. Do you support that number, and is it even realistic?
That's a big number, right? I mean, ever since I've been, hard to even comprehend, as long as I've been in Congress, and every time I got a camera in front of me, I would say the defense budget is inadequate. Was hovering around, 886, 890, around there. So I saw it because I can't do the things that I want to do in my district. We don't have enough ships. I could talk a long time about shipbuilding and that focus that the administration has placed on a new Office of Shipbuilding. This is very exciting because our Navy is struggling with just below 300. We've been decommissioning more ships than we're building. Chinese Navy has been racing up and past 400. Secretary of the Navy yesterday at the breakfast at Sierra and Space said that the Chinese built more ships last year than the United States has built since World War II. I can tell you that we have the same number of ships in the year 2025 that we had in 2003. And we had a 30-year shipbuilding plan around the year 2000 that really hasn't panned out. We can't keep doing things the way we've traditionally done things with our shipbuilding and ship repair industry. And I'll tell you the main reason, and not to deviate from the aviation side, but is workforce. I mean, it's workforce, and the skilled trade piece. And we have to do better than that. And we did really good work last Congress on some of our quality of life, quality of service issues that our military struggles with. We had a great bipartisan task force that we looked for 9 months at why we couldn't meet our recruitment numbers, why we couldn't retain the people we need in our all-volunteer force. And we identified really 5 key areas. Paying compensation was number 1. That's why you saw a 15% pay raise this past year for E1 through E4, our junior enlisted people. We identified housing, again, problematic really throughout the country. Childcare, not enough of it. Healthcare, always important, always something that our military families deserve the best of. And then spouse employment, because these guys move every 2 to 3 years. So how are we taking care of our spouses? We identified those things for active duty, and we put 29 amendments, came out of the House and Senate to the tune of about $5 billion. We put really good, meaningful changes in place, which I was so proud. It was a great effort. But we left out a few key areas. We left out our civilian mariners. We have a big military sea lift command right now that fills a lot of gaps that we are trying to fill with our lack of active duty Navy ships. We have military ships or civilian ships that are manned by civilians, by CivMars. And we left those guys out of the discussion because they too are hurting with the recruitment retention piece. And we also left out our skilled tradesmen. We left out our people that work in our shipyards and shipbuilding. It's a team effort out there. If I don't have all these pieces, then I can't have my Navy do. I mean, I know we see the aircraft carriers, but there's a whole battle group that goes with those carriers for protection, for supplies, for a lot of things, including submarines and aircraft. So it's really a team effort out there, but we got to do better in a lot of different ways. So back to your $1 trillion question.
Yes.
Yeah, so that's, I mean, trillion is a lot, right? I don't know if they're including this gold dome that's being talked about, and I don't know exactly what that entails. I would say we need more, but the name of the game right now is really finding places to tweak and reduce spending. So how's that congruous with like the DOGE cuts and then the 8% drill the Pentagon's doing and then the civilian resignations? I applaud the prioritizing of the defense budget. I will say that I think that is necessary, again, because it's expensive to build things like submarines and aircraft carriers and ships. But there's a lot of pushback even on my side of the aisle. You know, there's people that I feel are even teeter towards isolationism, and they really just don't want to spend any money, and that's the wrong thing to do right now, right? I mean, it's peace through strength, and we see that the world has gotten more dangerous. We saw not just Israel, we see what's happening in Ukraine with Russia. We know the China fight is potentially next. So it's not the time to back down from that. So, and I know that Secretary Hegseth met with Speaker Johnson, brought over some of our farther right members to the Pentagon last week just to I hope, talk about what that looked like for defense and understanding the need to spend money in defense. $1 trillion a lot. Well, I'd like to see a little more outline. What does that look like?
What's actually in that trillion?
Like housing for Oceana and F-35s for Oceana, the things that I, as the representative from that district, really care about. But there's a lot more to do on the quality of life side. We have to take care of the people first. But you have to give them the resources they need, and the Navy has expensive toys.
We have about 2.5 minutes. I'm gonna get greedy and try to.
Sorry.
No, you're fine. I'm gonna try and get 2 questions in here. A lot of the conversation about future aviation is about unmanned and autonomous tech. Robo wingmen, basically. You're a former pilot. Mm-hmm. Would you trust smart machinery to have your back in the cockpit?
Yeah, we have to, right? But it's not like it shows up one day and we fly a mission with it. There has to be an integration process.
How do you build that trust?
Pilots have to build that trust. That's how you do it. And right now, we are not there yet. We still have just our piloted at my air base, F-18s. that they're doing their mission. So, but there's so much talk, and it's exciting from the HASC side, the Armed Services side. We went to Silicon Valley last fall and met with defense tech industries to understand their challenges of integration of that into our warfighters and what that looked like. But we have to start that process, because you can't just snap your fingers and make that happen. And I know that they can identify, even when you debrief about the Red Sea and some of the challenges with working with our allies and unmanned and what that looked like. But we have to have those actually come to the warfighter, and on top of that, the energy needs that all of that technology, that AI, the autonomous equipment is going to need. We need to talk through what that looks like too.
Okay, last question here. We're up the road from DCA, where the mid-air collision with the Black Hawk happened a couple months ago. You put in a bill about crash avoidance systems. I'd like a quick update maybe on that bill. And then yesterday, the AP reported the Army will fly fewer flights with ADS-B out data turned off. Do you think that's a right move or a step in the direction?
Yeah.
Step in the right direction? Excuse me.
Yeah, too much helicopter traffic in a civilian airframe. I mean, that was such a tragedy. But I introduced a bill with Congressman Tom Barrett, who's an Army helicopter pilot, the Military Helicopter Training Act, to look at that feasibility study, to look at if we could put ADS-B in all of our military helicopters, because we don't have that right now. We don't have that capability. Would that have been helpful? I hope so. I mean, there was, I think, a lot of other factors, and I haven't seen the final report come out yet. But in busy civilian airspaces like that, we need all the safety backup we can get. So I would love to see that in our military helicopters.
Last word with 10 seconds. If you could fly anything, helicopter, airplane, et cetera, what would it be?
I loved my H-46. It was a tandem rotor helicopter, so we had 2 rotors front and back, and it was so maneuverable. I mean, you could spin that thing around on its nose. It was awesome. So we could vertical replenish from the supply ship to the other ships in the battle group. We'd do it for 10 hours at a time. You just swing your tail around. You pick up one thing from one ship, drop it off at just a sky crane. I mean, it was some of the best flying I ever did. So it was a lot of fun. The best years of my life with some of the greatest Americans. So
awesome. We're going to have to leave it there. Congresswoman, thank you for your time today.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. Sorry.
Introducing our View from the Top moderator and Axios Live General Manager, John Otto.
Good morning, everyone. How are you? I'm John Otto, GM of Axios Live. Thank you all for being here today. We love putting on programs like this for our audience, but they're not possible without the support of our underwriters and partners. And in this case, RTX has just been a phenomenal partner to us to put this on. So I'm excited to introduce to the stage the president of Raytheon, Phil Jasper.
Hi, John.
Phil.
Good seeing you.
You too. Thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me.
All right, so we like to get right into it.
Sure.
At Axios. So right now, global conflicts across from the Middle East to Europe, RTX has more than 30 products and systems currently in place and deployed. Like, what could you tell us a little bit more about performance, but also what are you learning in real time off of those deployments?
Yeah, first of all, thanks again for having me here. As I look at the performance of our system, I would summarize it to say that our systems are delivering as promised. And what do I mean by that? It means they're protecting lives, they're saving lives, they're protecting critical infrastructure, and they're actually performing so well it's serving as a deterrence to aggression, future aggression that's out there. And that's certainly our perspective at RTX, but we're hearing that from our customer base as well. Almost every customer interaction I'm having these days, the customer usually ends a meeting with something like, your systems are so effective, they're performing so well that, and we're very happy with them, but we need more of them and we need them faster. And I think part of the reason they're saying that is some of the examples we've seen, whether it's in the Ukraine, whether it's in the shipping channels in the Red Sea, or whether it's in the Middle East region. And I'll just use an example of the attack last year that Iran had on Israel. Iran launched over 100 ballistic missiles, dozens of cruise missiles and drones. They threw a lot at Israel on that particular attack. And it could have been an absolutely catastrophic event. And not only did they throw a lot at them, they didn't just launch them from Iran, they launched them from various points that their proxies had throughout the region. And so it was a very complex, very well-coordinated attack on the region. And at cities like Haifa, Tel Aviv, could have been tremendous loss of life, tremendous destruction of infrastructure. But what resulted was there was only one death that night. Now that's one too many. We never want to see our systems let anything through. But setting in context of what it could have been and how that transpired, and some of the things we learned was the effectiveness of the system. So it started with the radars, for example, that we produce. Things like our TIPI-2 radar, the Patriot system, our airborne APG-82 radars. They detected the launches. They characterized them in terms of what is the threat, where is it headed, where is it coming from, and then they continued to track them. And that really enabled then the effectors that we produce, like the family of Standard missiles, the AMRAAMs, for example, to destroy virtually all of those targets. And so when you see the results like that and how proven the systems are in battle, they're battle tested, that's creating that pull from our customer. They're asking us, give us more, give us to them fast, or give us those systems even faster.
Yeah. Let's stay on that point a little bit more. The feedback from customers needing more, and also the administration obviously is in a place they want things to move very fast right now. How is RTX positioned to help meeting that more faster type of deployment?
Yeah, it's a huge focus for us right now, and in fact, it's when you see the results like I just talked about, our systems performing, it's a real motivation factor for our workforce, that we wanted to continue to deliver. And so we are very focused really in three key areas in the business right now. The first is ramping up production in terms of everything that we've got. We've got hot production lines for all these systems. In fact, if you look at the weapons, the key interceptors that we're producing across RTX, on average, we're increasing production rates this year 74%. A couple examples of that I'll use. Our Coyote interceptor. So this is the interceptor used to counter unmanned aerial systems, so counter UAS systems. Tremendous demand for this system for really two reasons. One is the cost. It's very affordable, and the cost per kill ratio is very attractive to our customers. And the second reason is it's battle tested and very effective. It's got over 170 combat kills to date with this effector. We're ramping that production up by 90% this year. You look at AMRAAM, one of the most prolific air-to-air missiles that is in the global inventory. Demand has been incredibly strong for that. Last year, we doubled production. We're doubling production again this year, and we're going to continue to increase that production. And the way we do that is really the second focus area, is that we're investing in the facilities here in states like Texas and Alabama, and other places around the United States to increase that capacity. Last year, we broke ground on a $115 million expansion of our missile integration facility in Huntsville. We opened a state-of-the-art, $450 million state-of-the-art manufacturing capacity in our Texas campus that not only is producing critical systems and components for over 24 defense programs, but it's creating that collaboration space for 1,700 employees to continue to innovate, to continue to generate that next generation of capabilities and effects that are out there. And that really leads to the third focus area. We have to continue to accelerate our investment in the next generation of technologies. The threat environment is not standing still. Every attack, everything that's launched from the adversaries out there creates a learning environment for us. And that's where we need to continue to innovate and continue to accelerate development of new capabilities and evolve existing capabilities. And so I have an advanced technology organization in my group, very focused around things like composable weapons, things like software-defined apertures for our radar systems that really now are helping us stay one step ahead or even more from the adversary.
Reliability and efficiency is also what I heard there for your customer. Obviously significant, very important. On the commercial side of the business, are there principles that you've learned to help with some of the kind of applied defense acquisition, speeding up some of this deployment, some of this delivery that you can apply on the defense side?
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, RTX is very well positioned to leverage that commercial. You know, we got a nice balance across RTX between commercial aerospace as well as the defense segment as well. And so that's one of our core tenets in the organization is how do we take the commercial technology that's really at the forefront of what's going on in that and leverage that into our defense products as well. What that does for us is it allows us to deliver capabilities faster. It allows us to stay at the leading edge of what commercial technology can provide. And that's everything from engines to electronics and systems to radars, et cetera, that we can leverage that across the business. And you know, what's really important for us is to make sure that we've got the systems where we can share our people internally across commercial and defense, but that we're also talking to our customers, and the acquisition system is supporting the acquisition of commercial systems. They may not be exactly the same, but they're of a type, and that's what the acquisition, the FAR Part 12 acquisition really allows, is acquire that technology as commercial of a type and continue to enable companies such as ours to leverage that commercial heritage and that commercial breadth of experience and products that we have.
Now, we've heard more about the Golden Dome initiative more recently. Representative Kiggans mentioned it as well in the last segment. What can you tell us a little bit more about that initiative, and then also how does RTX plug in and be supportive there?
Yeah, so you know, as we look back at the threat environment, the capabilities of the potential adversaries that we have out there, they can, as I mentioned, they continue to evolve their capabilities. They have high-end ballistic missiles. There's hypersonics that are in development right now. And all of those present a threat to the United States. And so this bold vision of Golden Dome for America is something that we're fully supportive of. And we think it's really needed to protect the United States around our infrastructure, the lives here in the nation as well. And so we're absolutely very supportive of this, and we think it's very achievable too. You know, there's always some question about how achievable is this, just, you know, PowerPoint engineering. We think it's very, very achievable for us to go do, and we're embracing really three principles around Golden Dome that we think make sense for what the administration has laid out for vision. The first is start with those existing proven systems that are in inventory today. You've got hot production lines for. They're battle tested, they're proven in areas around the world, and start building them out. You know, within the next 6 to 18 months, we could deploy at half a dozen to a dozen critical infrastructure sites, key capabilities in terms of defending against unmanned threats, aerial threats, cruise missiles, ballistic missiles. Those systems are available today. And then over time, what you do is the second key principle is continue to innovate around the next generation of capabilities to fill those gaps, extend the capabilities with some systems that allow for longer protection systems, for example. And then the third key principle is embracing that this is an all-of-industry approach. It's not just a defense industry. As much as I'd like to say RTX could solve the entire Golden Dome problem, the reality is we can't. We have to partner with commercial businesses. We have to partner with maybe those companies that traditionally haven't been defense systems providers, because the technology is there, the capability is there, and we fully believe that this should be an all-of-industry approach. Mm-hmm.
We've got about a minute left. Mm-hmm. I want to stay on the inventory question for a second too. So we'll leave it maybe here. So what are some of the capabilities that are available today that could be put into place immediately to help support some of that Golden Dome initiative you laid out?
Yeah, so today we've got counter UAS systems that I talked about, for example, and that includes radars, the effectors, and it's not just our effectors. There's other companies that make counter UAS systems that could be included into that as well. You add the National Advanced Surface to Air Missile Systems, or NASAMS, to help defend against some of those aerial threats and cruise missiles. You build Patriot around that as well, that now you start to defend against ballistic missiles. And you can do that at critical infrastructure sites today. And then evolve that over time to include things like THAAD, to include the TPY-2 radars with a standard missile family. And then you continue, and you can do that on annual or every 2-year increments. And then you can build that that space layer over top of it to get then that complete national coverage that we need that Golden Dome will provide. And I think that's very, very achievable for us with the vision that's been laid out.
We're about to get the hook, Phil. Really appreciate your time today. I think we all learned a lot in the smart brevity format of 12 minutes or less. Thank you again for being here. Thank RTX again for their support today. Hope you all stay around for our next guest and my colleague, Alex Fitzpatrick. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Phil.
Thanks very much. Yep.
Please give it up for Axios data editor, Alex Fitzpatrick.
Hey everybody, I'm Alex Fitzpatrick, Axios data editor and aviation expert. I've been flying planes for almost 20 years now, so I'm very excited to talk about the future of aviation with our guest, Eric Allison of Joby Aviation. Thank you. Please. So let's start with the basics. I mean, helicopters have been a thing for many, many years. Your aircraft also flies vertically and takes off vertically. What makes it different? And I think we have a video to help illustrate this point.
Awesome, let's see the video. All right, so what we're developing is an all-electric vertical takeoff and landing aircraft. It takes off like a helicopter, so straight up, runway independent, but it can convert to flying like an airplane. And this is really enabled by a number of advances that have happened over the last 20 years. So we're talking about the way software and electronics and computers have advanced to let you make really efficient electric motors, as well as all of the advancements in batteries and powertrains that let electric vehicles in general on the ground or in other contexts work. So all of this can be put together to kind of radically rethink how do you do vertical lift. And this aircraft flying right behind us on the screen is the result of that. It is all electric. It has 6 electric motors that are actually direct drive, so no gearboxes, so minimal moving parts. And these propellers attached to those motors can point up to take off like a helicopter and then tilt forward and fly like an airplane. And this lets us actually design that powertrain for incredibly low noise and then really good operating costs, which together we think opens up the air taxi market to make it much more practical for lots of people.
Let's talk about that market on the commercial side a little bit. What is the vision for a business around this aircraft?
So we want to deploy these as air taxis. So the vision is really basic, actually. You open up Uber on your phone. Uber is one of our investors and commercial go-to-market partners. And you select a ride. Instead of taking an Uber Black or an Uber X, you'd pick a Joby. We also will have our own app that you can open up and just take a Joby right away. So, and then a car will come and get you, take you to the nearest takeoff and landing spot. And other people will be arriving just in time. We'll fill the seats that way, dynamically on demand. And the aircraft will take off. If you're in Lower Manhattan, 7 minutes to the airport, to JFK, land as close to the terminal as you can. We're also partnered with Delta, get you right onto your flight. And instead of taking an hour and a half waiting in traffic, driving through Long Island, you can get there in 7-8 minutes.
Now, you mentioned aircraft noise. I lived in New York City for about a decade. Helicopter noise is constant and annoying, and people hate it. How do you convince people that this is a good thing for the community, basically, right?
Well, you have to basically show this, right? Yeah. Or actually, you have to hear it for yourself. And so we actually went to New York City back at the end of 2023, and we did a press conference with the mayor there, actually down at the Lower Manhattan heliport, and we flew one of our aircraft, and we invited the community out to see it and to hear it. And people actually asked our CEO to stop speaking during the press conference so they could hear it better because it was so quiet. So that was kind of cool. And it's really a remarkable technology. It's a lot of work. Electric just doesn't get you low noise for free. You actually have to do really hard design work that's enabled by this new technology. But we're pretty excited with what we've put together. When it's taking off and landing 300 feet away, 65 dB, so it means we could have this conversation and not raise our voice during takeoff and landing, which is the loudest phase. When it's flying overhead in airplane mode, 45 dB at 1,500 feet, this means you won't hear it in an urban environment. It's basically silent if it's flying overhead.
This being a defense event, you've worked with the Defense Department on various projects. What have you learned through those projects that might apply to your commercial operations? Yeah,
we've been really fortunate to have the amazing partners on the defense side of things. So we worked with DIU, or DIUX, I think it was at the time, very early on to do some of our early flight testing and development work in a way that supported what we were doing. The defense partners have been really excited to see how this commercial tech can actually have applications in different contexts within the defense side of things. And so we've looked at things like on-base logistics. We've looked at other types of use cases that are just a direct application of this technology that we're developing. We've also worked with, so we've been working with AFWorks and Agility Prime primarily over the last few years. We've done work on looking at hybridization as well, for example. So we actually took one of our older prototypes, we converted it to a hydrogen hybrid aircraft. So we actually took the seats out, put a big fuel tank in and a fuel cell, just a tech demonstrator. But we did that conversion in about 6 weeks, actually, and then went out and flew almost 600 miles in terms of a demonstration flight, just to show what that hybridization tech can do for this type of aircraft.
Now, my understanding is that commercially, as far as commercial operations go, you're a little bit further along in Dubai than you are in the US. Can you speak to why that is and what you're learning by working in that area?
Yeah, so we were really fortunate to be able to strike a partnership with the Road Transport Authority in Dubai, so it's basically the transportation regulator in Dubai, to be able to work together with them and be the air taxi provider for the city and the emirate of Dubai once we were able to start a commercial launch. And so part of that is that we're working with the Gulf regulators, the GCAA, which is essentially the FAA for the UAE, and what they're doing is taking the FAA work and then kind of accelerating some of the final approvals on it that could get us to an initial commercial authorization as soon as possible. And so that's been a great collaboration so far. They're very forward-leaning. They really want to work collaboratively they really want to be first in terms of getting this technology out into the market. And so we're working with them very closely.
Now, speaking of the FAA, integrating an entirely new kind of aircraft into the American airspace is complicated and hard and takes a long time. How far along are you in that process? And also, new boss of the FAA, new boss for the FAA. How is that interaction going so far?
Yeah, so the FAA has been a really collaborative partner. So we've been working with the FAA since we actually, I think, formally started working with the FAA back in 2020 in terms of starting to work on the certification basis for this entirely new class of aircraft. We've worked together to define out all of the key aspects of how this aircraft is regulated and certified. The final piece of the puzzle went to a final rule last year, what was called the SFAR, so the special regulation around piloting and operation rules for this class of aircraft because of the way the FAA is categorizing it for actually certification. So we've been very pleased with that, and we're just looking forward to continuing to do that deep work and see that relationship accelerate and getting through all of the now myriad of testing that we're doing to get to that type certification, which is really this design certification where we have to show that every aspect of our design meets the safety regulations, and we have to do all of the testing for every little bit of it, and the FAA has to be alongside with that to get all of that work done.
Now, the testing and all that is one thing. Actually convincing people to get on this new aircraft is a whole different challenge. How are you thinking about approaching that in terms of getting people to agree, okay, yeah, this is a safe new aircraft to fly on?
Well, I mean, really getting to the type certification and being able to launch commercially is that fundamental first step because there's a reason why aviation is regulated the way it is and why people are confident getting onto aircraft to fly every day, right? And so that's a really critical piece of this. At the same time, we want to start to do more of the kind of things that we did in New York City, where we actually took one of our aircraft out there, we flew that aircraft, we let people see it, we let people hear it, and we'll be doing more and more of that. We actually put one of our mock-ups at just last week. I think it was last week. We had it at the California Science Center down in LA. And so we had one of our mock-ups on display there, and we brought a bunch of kids in to see a movie that was made on the IMAX that we were featured in as well. And there's a number of these steps where we start to broaden the awareness in the community as this technology is closer and closer to commercial launch to help people be familiar with it and really see how this can benefit their lives. And kind of get everyone to understand that vision of this rapid way to get around that is not constrained by the traffic and the congestion that we deal with every day on the ground.
Now, I want to ask about the tariff roller coaster this week. It's part of my job to cover this stuff and to know what's happening. And man, it's been a hard week to understand anything that's going on right now. As a company that, I'm sure you have foreign suppliers and that sort of thing, how worried are you? How anxious does it make you feel about you're not sure what something's going to cost in the next week or hour?
So one of the things that we've done a little bit differently than others in our industry is we've really leaned on vertical integration. So we build nearly everything ourselves. So actually I have right here, this pocket. This, for example, is one of our flight computers. So this is we have 3 of these in our aircraft. This is the brain, basically, smaller than a cell phone, similar chips for what's in there. And the power of our vertical integration is that we can dial in and tailor what we need, and we can then build it ourselves, and we really control our supply chain pretty deeply as a result. So we haven't seen negative effects right now, but obviously we're carefully monitoring on a hour-by-hour basis as to what's happening and how things will play out down the road.
Yeah. And this goes back to the regulatory issue a little bit, but Colin mentioned earlier the tragic crash, the midair here, a few months ago. Airspace is busy. How are you sort of figuring out how do you integrate this new aircraft into airspace that's already very congested?
So we are taking a very pragmatic approach to how we've designed this aircraft. The aircraft is designed to be piloted by commercially rated pilots, which is why we needed those special rules to be done from the FAA for how do you train pilots and how do you operate these aircraft integrated into the airspace system. So it flies. It integrates just like any other helicopter or small aircraft would integrate into the airspace. We actually have been doing studies then with NASA as well as working with the FAA and the Tech Center up in Atlantic City on how do you think about future integrations into the airspace system. We did a study with NASA. It was the end of 23 as well. We published it as a paper in 24 where we used NASA's got a ATC simulator, basically. It's a big center with screens, and brought in retired FAA controllers and ran a multi-day simulations around different scenarios in a busy Class B airspace. We used Dallas-Fort Worth area as the example. How do you integrate into the airspace in this system, and what's the capacity? How do you, if you just use existing procedures and the helicopter position in the tower, and then if you introduce incremental changes, like very small additional kind of procedures, how does that affect capacity overall? I'm really pleased with the results, that it shows there's a lot of things you can do with just procedures and that have quite a lot of capacity to support this type of traffic in a typical busy metroplex.
Eric, we'll have to leave the conversation there. Thank you so much for your time.
Awesome.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Welcoming back to the stage, Colin Demarest.
Good morning, guys. I'm back. Our next guest this morning joins us from the Defense Innovation Unit, or DIU. Please welcome its Deputy Director of Commercial Operations, Young McNally. Appreciate it.
Good to see you.
Good to see you. So I brought this up with the Congresswoman earlier. There were some executive orders last night or last evening. One of them was about defense acquisition reform, which I think is pretty much in the DIU wheelhouse. Could I get maybe your reaction, your feedback, your thoughts on that one in particular?
Great excitement. DIU is a huge proponent of OT authority. We've done 550 CSOs ourselves in the 10 years that we have been around. We have to move at the speed and scale of commercial technology, and this is another great step towards the ability to do that. I think it builds on the software memo that Secretary Hegseth signed a month or two ago as well. So it's really exciting. The other thing that I've been thinking more about as we speed up acquisition, we also need to speed up the other part so that all of the different aspects of getting commercial technology into the hands of the warfighter goes fast. So, budgeting, we can talk a little bit about the agile fielding line that Congress has given to DIU. That allows us to go a little bit faster. So we're also going to need to figure out how do we continue to speed up budgeting, and how do we speed up cybersecurity and ATOs and all of the other aspects as well that clearances so that companies can get in.
So what are some of these most pressing topics or projects the Pentagon has on its plate right now that the commercial world could jump in on?
One thing that continues to be true is that commercial tech can be used across so many different aspects of what the department does. I mean, even in DIU, we're thinking about everything from energy and nuclear power and how is that going to go onto installations, those sorts of things, all the way through to biosurveillance, to the things that we talk more about in terms of AI and drones and all of those. The truth is, across every single aspect, there is commercial technology out there. So yes, we're super excited in particular about software, about the role of AI and what it's allowing us to do differently. But I think that the real message for commercial technology across so many areas, if you're not thinking about how this could be applicable to the DoD, you should be.
I was going to give you bonus points for not saying AI, but you said it at the end. Speaking of these customers and the people you're dealing with day to day, what's the number one complaint you hear from those folks who might not be familiar with dealing with selling to the Pentagon or dealing with like an Army acquisition shop?
Yeah. I continue to be impressed by all the people who want to get into this game. Selling into the Department of Defense, especially commercial technology, is not for the faint of heart. And we celebrate all of the veterans who learned lessons, when they were in uniform and have an idea and want to get going. I think as impressive are the people I'm meeting. I was meeting with a company yesterday. It's a bunch of 30-year-olds who have no military experience whatsoever, happened upon this big, hairy problem, and think of this as their way to serve as well. So number one, you have to come in with that energy and realizing this is not for the faint of heart. I think what's still hard and that we continue, and I'm really making it a focus this year to make further progress on, is demand signal and really knowing, what are the areas, that question you asked before, that we need to be focusing on, as well as what I hit on in the first answer to the question, which is what are those other scaling barriers beyond financial to make it easier for companies to do the work and for us to get that technology in for the warfighter.
There's some thought out there, some people I've spoken to said there might be almost too many on-ramps, too many innovation cells, where it gets almost a little confusing, right? Like, where do I go? Whose hand do I shake? Temp check on that? Where do you fall on that? Are people doing too much? Are they overcomplicating things, or is more always welcome?
I think to one degree more is welcome, and it shows that innovation is happening. To some degree, everyone has to be an innovator in the Department of Defense for this to happen. And the fact that there are so many different groups doing that, whether it's a spark cell on a base to DIU to Army Futures Command to something else, is a good thing. But we do need to better coordinate across all of those different organizations. We do a lot of work organizing what we call, of course, there's an acronym, the DICE, the Defense Innovation Community of Entities, and how are we coordinating across to understand what everyone is working on and do that together. I also think the on-ramps can continue to be even better, right? And that's been a huge focus of mine as well. How do we make sure that we're getting the right information to the right folks? So there's a lot, that's a good thing, but we need to make them better and better coordinated. Community of entities is a very DoD phrase. I don't think you'd hear that anywhere else in this world. But at the crux of this is dual use, right? Like that is what we're going for here. A lot of people are using that word. How have you seen that phrase evolve over the years from maybe when it first came on the scene with DIUX or something like that to where we are now in 2025? Yeah. First of all, I think that the term still works and is really important, right? Like and certainly there are certain technologies that are just for the Defense Department, but for the vast majority, they need to be dual use. And when I talk to funders, they want to make sure that they're seeing that as well, right? You have to have that, because ultimately we want to make sure that these are viable companies commercially. And the dual use nature of that allows that. And I think it also enables the department to really pull in that commercial technology. I think how it's evolved is a more sophisticated understanding of what dual use means, right? It's not as simple as exactly what you're doing over here, you can bring over here. How you do that and which parts and which one you start with, I think there's just like a more evolved understanding of how that happens as we have get more sophisticated collectively over the last 10 years. What do you think the next step is for dual use? What's that next big leap, you think? I think for the department, the bigger leap is how do we take advantage of even more of that? Like there is so much more potential dual use technology out there, beyond what we're already doing that is not yet dual use. And so how do we continue to find that and bring that in?
And to your point about funders and investors and stuff, from my seat, it seems like defense tech is very hot. Everyone wants to get in on the defense tech game. Are you seeing that as well? Are you seeing an uptick? What are those conversations like? And maybe why are these people all of a sudden jumping aboard?
I think there continues to be an uptick. I mean, I was just talking to a funder this week that is not defense tech focused. They have multi-hundred billion dollar funds in them, and they're sort of selectively picking and choosing where they get involved. And we're seeing more of that, as well as focused funds in this area, and it's all incredibly exciting. Ultimately, the department needs to buy more of this for all of this to continue to happen and take off, and that's what I'm really focused on.
So in August, I spoke to DIU Director Doug Beck, who I assume you know well.
Very well.
He teased blue manufacturing at the time. It's a real thing now. As of last week, I saw the press release. What does that initiative for the vetted list of advanced manufacturing kind of earn the DoD? Why is it important? Why should people buy into this?
Yeah, I think it's the role that we're trying to play to help drive advanced manufacturing. So essentially, how we came into this is, DIU, as we have talked about, has been really critical in bringing commercial technology in. And over the last year, we were seeing that we needed to continue to think about how we're going to build up the industrial base here using advanced manufacturing, doing it completely differently. And on the one hand, you have these manufacturers over there getting after it and needing to get after it even more so that we're not as dependent on China and other places. We can do it here. And then you have defense tech companies so that they can focus on the technology. Let's think about a different way to help them scale. So we're really focusing on the how. And the marketplace is to connect those. So we are going to, it's open right now. We have well over 50 submissions already, and we're excited about how many more we're going to get in. We're going to certify those manufacturing companies, looking at them for things like supply chain risk, foreign influence, those sorts of things, put them on the marketplace so that then other companies are able to find them and they're able to make that match against each other. We're hoping to do even more in advanced manufacturing this year. We likely will have some AOIs posted, other things as well, but the manufacturing marketplace was a place to start. It also leans on a new authority that we have when we became a PSA last year, so a multi-stakeholder partnership. And it's just another example of how we're continuing to have these different authorities that allow us to work with the commercial sector in a different way.
And so those 50 companies, they have just applied right now. They're not vetted.
No, I'm just showing that within a week, there's already that much
Do you have a
interest.
sense of time of when maybe the first few might trickle in or get that stamp of approval?
We're working through all that, so in the next few months.
Okay, awesome. When it comes to defense innovation, what can the US, lawmakers, DoD, industry, folks like yourself, learn from Ukraine, right? That is always the conversation we're having in this space. What can be learned there? Let's go there.
Yeah. I mean, look, I think there's a tremendous amount that we are learning and that we need to continue to learn. Everything from how warfare is changing, I won't use the word again so I can keep some more bonus points, but autonomy, other areas like that. I think also the speed with which, and how quickly you have to iterate. Manufacturing, how much you can quickly build up your manufacturing base, having it close to the front line as possible. The different types of environments, the EW denied, GPS denied environments that we have to work in.
That was part of Artemis as well that you guys announced, right? The 4 companies that are doing the one-way attack drones.
Yeah. So I think it's an example of where we're building inspiration from Ukraine and moving fast. We launched a CSO just late last year for one-way attack drones called Artemis. We quickly did the down selection and picked 4 companies. 2 of them are partnering with Ukrainian companies on that as well. We're doing the integration test this month and then final test next month. And that was exactly inspired by Ukraine.
Awesome. About a minute and a half, 2 questions. We're going to try. You guys are jumping into air logistics and optimization. Why and what can you learn from the commercial side?
Yeah. Well, we actually jumped in a few years ago on that, even more so. What we found, not surprising, is that the commercial sector is really good at figuring out how to optimize logistics and how can we take advantage of that. So we partnered with the Air Force, the Navy, and US Transcom to we brought in C3AI, Google Public Sector, and AWS to optimize logistics, to have less planes that had no one on them, empty routes, to optimize fuel, all of those different things. We found that it was incredibly helpful, right? We were able to radically reduce planning time, radically reduce the amount of fuel consumption, all of those things by using that commercial technology, and some of them are now moving into production contracts. And I know that contested logistics and how we can leverage the advances is a hot topic right now. We're hearing it and talking about it with everyone from various combatant commanders to different services, et cetera. So there'll be more. Watch this space.
Awesome. Last word here. I hear you guys will be making some news today regarding the military basing and energy production. You want to clue us in?
Yeah, so anyways, if you're not already signed up for DIU newsletter, that's a plug, so that way you can find out about it.
Yeah.
Or future of both, actually. Both you should be signed up for. So make sure you do that. But we will be announcing the winners from CSO we launched last year for nuclear microreactors on installations. And I think this is very topical right now.
Yeah, awesome. Look, we got one
Look at
second
that.
left. That was perfect.
Awesome.
Liz, thank you for your time
My
today.
pleasure. Nice to see you all. Thank you.
All right, before we get our final guest up here, we're going to share the results from the poll we posted earlier. In case you forgot, the question was, will the Air Force's F-47 and the Navy's F/A-XX be the last manned fighters America makes? All right, no. Okay. That is interesting. I think the same thing was said about the F-35 at some point, so we'll see where this goes. Our final guest today is Chris Brose from Anduril Industries. He's the President and Chief Strategy Officer. Chris, come up, please. How you doing, man?
Thanks for having me.
Of course. So I saw Congresswoman Kiggans at Sierra Space yesterday. I saw you there as well.
Yeah.
You were speaking with Navy Secretary John Phelan. You had the Copperheads overhead. You had the dive behind you, I believe. What was your conversation about in that context of defense tech and kind of that naval situation there?
Yeah, it was a great opportunity to actually have the chance to show him a lot of the things we're doing. I've had a prior engagement with him, but the opportunity at Sierra Space is to really let the products and capabilities sort of speak for themselves, right? It's one thing to talk about an extra large autonomous undersea vehicle. It's another thing to see the actual front section of it right there live and in person. So too with the Copperhead family of effectively torpedoes that we announced for that conference. So just the ability to kind of walk him through all of the things that Anduril is doing in the maritime domain, and just the way we're taking a different approach to that, right? I think that was sort of the main theme of a lot of what we were discussing, was just how we're designing these capabilities different, we're producing them different, how they are defined by software, AI, and autonomy. So just very differently kind of thinking about maritime power and the future of the Navy.
So we just had that poll up right before you got here.
Yeah.
F-47, F/A-XX. But in your corner of the world, it's YQF-44A, one of the two drones that got the unmanned fighter designation. What's the latest there?
The latest is we are on pace and on schedule, which I guess is like a remarkable thing to be able to say about defense programs in Washington, D.C. But we are super excited about how the program is going. The Air Force has been an awesome partner. We have the first aircraft already assembled, and we are charging toward first flight, which we're not going to say when it is, but it'll be soon. We're really excited about it.
It's supposed to be this summer, so is that correct?
The summer is a good designation and appropriately flexible. So we're like I said, we're on schedule, on target, on cost, and really excited about where it's going. And to the point about the manned fighter, I think what was really interesting in the president's announcement of the F-47, both his mention and then the Chief of Staff of the Air Force. All of them really emphasized how this is going to be a family of systems. This isn't going to be a single, very expensive, very capable manned system, alone and unafraid. It is going to be working in collaboration with the Collaborative Combat Aircraft Program, with other capabilities. So this idea of manned-unmanned teaming really being at the heart of where air dominance is going, I think is absolutely right, and certainly something that we're excited to contribute to.
So let's stick with the administration here. Plenty has been written about Trump 2.0 and the vibes, build, baby, build, drill, baby, drill. Where does that intersect with defense tech? Where are you guys conversing, mingling, that sort of thing?
Yeah, I think, what are we, 3 months-ish in? I think, we're still sort of waiting to see, all of the actions that flow out. But I think initially, conversations are good. I think there's a real desire to do things differently, as evidenced by the executive orders that came out yesterday, across shipbuilding and acquisition reform and defense exports. There's a recognition that much of what we are dealing with in the defense enterprise is broken, that we are not where we need to be, that we are behind our peer competitor in China in some very important ways. So, I think all of that is very good. Now the question becomes, okay, how are we going to follow through? What actions are we going to take when you get down to the real nuts and bolts of moving money, creating new programs, creating new capability? That's the challenge that has bedeviled us in the past. But I'm optimistic that this new administration really wants to tackle that head on.
On the executive orders, like you said, you had shipbuilding, you had foreign military sales, and you had acquisition reform, which I discussed with Liz earlier. Which one kind of jumped out at you the most? What do you think is going to have the biggest impact? Foreign military sales, I thought, was maybe the most interesting there.
Yeah, I think that's interesting. I think the acquisition reform one is interesting, less because it was calling for necessarily new acquisition reform. I think that it was emphasizing the desire or emphasizing the willingness to use authorities that have been on the books, abide by laws that have been on the books for a very long time, and actually drive utility and accountability into this procurement process. So, to me, that then gets into, okay, well, what are we going to do about it, right? I mean, there's a discussion of we're going to review programs that are behind cost or over cost, behind schedule, sort of threat to cancel, those types of things. We'll see if that actually happens, right? I mean, I actually think some accountability in that regard would be a great thing. I think the emphasis on utilizing commercial preference, acquisition authorities that have been on the books and on the law for years and have basically been disregarded by the Department of Defense, or that's been worked around in, sort of frustrating ways. It'd be great to see an emphasis on that, a preference for other transaction authorities. I mean, I enjoy it because in my former life on the Senate Armed Services Committee, I mean, we wrote hundreds of pages and passed hundreds of pages of acquisition reform legislation, most of which, it's not clear that the department ever really kind of internalized and began to implement. So I actually think just using the laws and using the authorities that we have to achieve different and better outcomes would be a phenomenal step for the better.
If we jump back to F-47 and just aircraft in general, what's the most pressing problem you're seeing right now with defense aviation?
I think the most pressing problem, and it's the same across every domain and every type of capability, is just lack of capacity. We don't have enough stuff. And I think, we have seen that in high relief in Ukraine. We are seeing it in the Red Sea now. We have built a military over the past generation that's more or less defined by luxury goods. I mean, our military platforms and weapons are phenomenally capable, but they're like Ferraris. A Ferrari is a great thing to have, but I'm not driving it to work. It's not going to be a vehicle that most people are using to commute day to day. Like, we need more of that, right? We need more lower cost, mass producible platforms, weapons across all domains, and certainly in the air domain. So that's where, again, for us, collaborative combat aircraft, the weapons that are going to have to complement that, certainly as you had Liz up here, we're one of the companies collaborating with DIU and the Air Force on the low-cost cruise missile that they refer to as the Enterprise Test Vehicle. So again, that's never going to be as capable as an LRASM or a JASM, but you can have a lot more of them at a much lower price. So this whole notion of how you have a high-low mix of capabilities, whether it's air platforms or weapons, to me, that's the real challenge, because if we run out of weapons in the first 7 days of a conflict with China, we're not going to be building that stuff back quickly. We need a totally different class of military power that is mass producible, that is replenishable, and you just have to design that stuff differently.
And that 7-day timeline, I mean, that's not hyperbole. You're not just saying that for effect either.
No, and I mean, this is the thing. It's like we've done war games on this for years and years and years and years, and it's been the exact same outcome. And then in case anybody was still unconvinced, the Ukrainians go into combat with Russia and they burn through an entire decade's worth of anti-tank weapons in the first several months of combat. And it's going to take us 2.5 years to get new production of those systems onto the battlefield. So if it's going to take that long on tactical weapons, how long do we think it's going to take on these more exquisite, air-to-surface, air-to-air type weapons that the Indo-Pacific fight is going to require? So again, it's not about those systems being irrelevant. They're absolutely relevant. I think the problem is we are off by an order of magnitude in the number of weapons and platforms that we're going to need to reestablish deterrence, to push the deterrence timelines to the right. And if, God forbid, we end up in a fight, we're going to have the industrial base and a totally different class of weapons and platforms designed to be producible at a price that we can pay to be able to stay in that fight for months and potentially years, because that's what we are seeing these types of conflicts look like in the Middle East, in Europe, et cetera.
And so that's the long form pitch of Arsenal 1, correct? Like that's what you guys are getting after. Are you still on track to begin producing weapons there in July 2026?
Yes, we are, because we have to be. I mean, we're not standing up Arsenal because it's cool and interesting. We're standing it up because we have won production contracts that have delivery requirements that we absolutely are going to meet and not be behind schedule on. So the reason we ended up, one of the main reasons we ended up outside of Columbus was, in addition to the phenomenal space that we have to build greenfield facilities and really expand out the multi-million square foot production that Arsenal will become, we have an ability to fall in immediately on an 800,000 square foot facility where we can start doing the production on collaborative combat aircraft, some of the other weapons programs that we're winning, so that we are delivering on time, on schedule.
What about workforce, right? That's the Rust Belt area. Workforce is a big topic in our worlds. What did Ohio or Columbus more specifically offer you guys there?
Yeah, I mean, the opportunity to tap into workforce across commercial automotive, aerospace and defense, other sectors is great. But I guess the point that I would bring it back to is the way we're thinking about expansion of the industrial base to do the kinds of programs that we're working on, low-cost autonomous systems, is that when you design those systems to be mass producible, you are also designing them to be able to be produced and assembled by a far larger workforce than we're traditionally used to having in national defense, where you kind of look across our weapons and platforms and scalability is gated across all kinds of specialty workers or specialty kind of custom production lines, kind of manufacturing processes, critical minerals, defense unique supply chains, all of these things that make it incredibly difficult to produce the systems that we're building, to surge capacity when demand requires it. Our view is that problem has to be solved on the front end. You're not going to make a system mass producible if you haven't designed it to be mass producible at the start. And that means that you have to be able to bring a far larger segment of the American workforce to bear to build and assemble those systems. So building and assembling a Fury collaborative combat aircraft looks a heck of a lot closer to assembling IKEA furniture than it does building an F-35, and that is the point. That is to be able to bring a far larger swath of the American workforce into the industrial base to solve these problems. And our view is the workers are there, the workforce is there, the interest and desire to do this work is there, and we're creating phenomenally well-paying jobs in Ohio and a lot of other places to do it.
And to double down on that, like we're in an age of mass, at least sought after mass, and in global markets. So what can a defense contractor learn from like a retail prime, if you want to call them that, like a Walmart or a Target or something like that?
Yeah, I mean, until Walmart opens a weapons division, I'm not sure there's going to be a ton. But I would say the broader lessons, I think, get back to this notion of designing for mass producibility and really kind of thinking about operating at an order of magnitude from where we are. I mean, when we talk about defense production at scale historically, over the past few decades, we're not really producing things in large volumes as the commercial world would define it, right? We're talking about producing weapons a few hundred a year, producing aircraft a few dozen a year. That's not a lot, right? When you look at what the commercial world is thinking of producing, and put aside the Walmarts, but commercial automotive, right? Tesla is producing 4,000 to 5,000 vehicles per week in one facility. That's the kind of world that I think we need to start thinking about defense being able to operate in, where we are producing thousands and tens of thousands of intelligent systems, weapons, robotic systems, and just creating a capacity that we have not had for a very long time. And I think that's the sort of anomalous period that we're moving out of, where we could continue to just optimize the force to be ever smaller and ever more exquisite, and somehow we're going to win. That's not how we've traditionally won in the past. That's not how we won in World War II. It was a war of production and attrition and replenishment and duration. which is, I think, how the future of competition is going to look like, far more than this kind of anomalous post-world period or post-Cold War period that we're still kind of working our way out of.
So I'm getting the hook, but before we go, I gotta ask, you wrote Kill Chain.
Yes.
Did you ever find a typo post-publication?
No, and that was not for lack of looking. So this is sort of like a trigger point for me. In my experience, so before I was at Anduril, before I was in government, I was an editor, and I take editing very seriously. And my experience of the publishing world is they've basically given up on editing. They basically just kind of throw stuff at the wall and then ship it. I took as a point of pride that I was not going to publish a book that I believed had an error in it. Now, or a typo in it. Now, what I have found is that I had one factual error that I have found. I said Robert McNamara was the head of GM when in reality he was the head of Ford. So a commenter in the...
Oh, they'll let you know right away.
Yeah, no, they very helpfully in the Amazon reviews, in between the Chinese Communist Party 1-star reviews that I got, the one commenter called out that factual error, which I was helpfully able to correct in the paperback edition. But to my knowledge, and it, again, was not for lack of trying to find it, I have not found a typo, an actual typo, missed word, those kinds of things that I find in books all the time. And it's one thing if it goes out in a daily newsletter or something where people are moving fast, but it feels like in a book you should probably try to eliminate those errors.
Fantastic. We're going to have to leave it there, Chris. Thank you for your time, and thank you guys in the audience for showing up this morning and hanging out with us. Thank you for the event staff and everyone else who helped make this possible, and make sure you guys go to axios.com/events and definitely grab some refreshments on your way out. See you at the next one.
Thanks.